All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming. Before we get started tonight, well, I want to wait for Steve to come in because we have a hearing. But I can tell you where the exits are. There are exits in the back of the room. That one goes outside. That one is the way you came in likely. This goes into my office, but then out in the hall, and that doesn't go anywhere. So don't go that way. We're going to wait for our town attorney because we have a hearing that we postponed. I don't know where he is.
Did he call, say he was gonna be late?
He's here, he's in the building. He's just not in the room.
Yeah, they're all worried up, all messed up.
Yeah, there's a property that our code enforcement is suggesting that we consider condemning it. She says that the premises are unsafe or unmaintained. The section block and lock is 240.2-63.12A. I'll go see where he is. You coming, Steve? He's not in there. He might be in the copy room. Do we have any parties here that are here on behalf of this hearing? He disappeared into thin air.
I just got a question, what does it mean? What does hearing chapter 60 of the Malta Town Code entitled premises unsafe or unmaintained mean? What is that for? Somebody making a new law?
No. It's just a process that we would have to go through to possibly condemn a property in Malta.
Oh,
It's the beginning of a condemnation proceeding.
or may someone put up your property that ain't maintained,
Oh, there he is.
what it is?
Okay, so like I said, our code enforcement has recommended that we condemn, it's lot 12 at 2738 Route 9 in the town of Malta. She has produced evidence that we all have seen. And there is, Steve, I confirmed that there is no one here that is here of interest to this proceeding.
All right, well, Erica, if you could come up to the front and just put on the record where we are with things with me?
We did adjourn this because we found that the owner that we originally served the notification to had sold the residence to someone else. So we tried to renotice the new
Yeah, we
property owner.
don't know that to be a fact because they've not made any actual report to the town, but in the interest of trying to afford the individual all required due process rights, we attempted to further notify other owners. And while we're on that point, Jennifer, did you mail to the proposed owners by, or the apparent owners by certified mail, notice of this hearing?
Yes,
And you posted it in the paper originally as well, correct?
correct.
And Erica, you also posted at the property, the notice of the hearing? And that, what is the status? Have you been back to the property? Okay.
No one's living there, but I guess they are squatting, they're back and forth. People are stealing stuff from the property. Oh, thank you.
All right, so the condition is still threatening to the health and safety and the welfare of the residents, consistent with the original report you gave to the board?
Right, and I now know that there's animals going in and out, so,
Right, so it's deteriorating further, correct?
correct.
And you haven't heard or received any um, correspondence at all from the purported owner of the property?
I have not.
And you've spoken with the park, correct, about these proceedings and the owners of the property, of the real property?
Yeah, they're on board with it
Alright.
being condemned.
And I also spoke to the owners of the property about it.
So, oh, I gotta get another page to that. All right, is there anything else that you need to add to that?
No,
Any other findings, any other issues at all at the property?
nope, kind of just the same.
All right, so it's still your conclusion that the property is unsafe and unfit for human habitation and poses a threat to any residents, occupants, and the residents of the town of Malta, correct?
Yes.
All right, and, all right, board, if you have any questions for Erica, feel free to ask, but
Did you state that the property had been sold? Or,
it's a mobile home, and Erica was notified that may have happened. They haven't registered or filed anything with the town. There's nothing that we could determine online. But in light of that, as we reported at the last board meeting, the reason for the adjournment was because we attempted to contact those purported new owners to advise them as well of this hearing, of the situation at the property, the seriousness of the problem, and the threat to occupants, tenants, and residents of the town of Malta at the property known as 12 Avenue A, Malta Gardens, lot number 12. So, yes, the mobile home itself may have been sold to a new owner, and the information we were provided, that owner has been contacted and advised of this hearing as well.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Erica? So we do have a resolution that I'm sorry was not actually posted, but it's the same resolution that was posted last time to condemn the property. I would probably wait until we have our action items, unless you think it's appropriate, Steve, to do that now.
No, we should do that in action items. Also, the one you have, we actually have to, it was double-sided. I handed you, you're missing the second page. So I'll make a copy of that real quick for the board and public. If there's anybody from the public that wants to be heard on the matter, we certainly could have you come up. But the primary purpose of the hearing is to afford the owners or tenants or occupants of this property located at number 12, 2738 Route 9, Town of Malta, known as 12A Malta Gardens, to be heard before the board conclusively determined the condition of the property. In light of the fact that no one has appeared, they're in default, and the board could proceed, if they choose tonight, with adopting a resolution. And I'll provide the second page in a moment. And,
Okay, well, with that then, we'll move on with the rest of our agenda.
yeah, you should close the
Oh,
close the
close it.
hearing. And
I have a question. This is probably for you, Steve. I understand the reason why we want to condemn it. You don't want anybody living there. My question is our only option is that the homeowner has to raise the building? Are we saying that this building's so far gone that they couldn't rehabilitate it?
that was the recommendation from code enforcement that you tentatively approved the last time, where that it is in such a condition that it's not habitable and could not be restored in any meaningful way due to its condition. Clearly, if they were presented, some form of plan or otherwise, the town board could consider alternative measures, but based upon the report from your code enforcement officer that you tentatively adopted, yes, the condition is in such a deteriorated and unsafe manner that it can't properly be restored. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And that homeowner decided not to appear here. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you, Erica, for all your work on this.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if there's no other questions or comments from board members or the public, I will close that hearing. And if you'll stand, we'll salute the flag and we'll take a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Our first action tonight is to accept the minutes of the town clerk from our July 8, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is comment from town residents. I want to remind you, this is not a question and answer period. If you have questions that you want this board to address, please submit them in advance, and we will do our best. Any public? Step right up. And please tell the clerk your name and address.
Hi, I'm Dory Campano at 33 Copper Ridge Road. And I had spoken to Cynthia at one time about my proposal, and she did not think that it was under consideration. So I'm not a great public speaker. I'm just going to read my little blurb and give it to you. I'd like to propose that the town board consider reducing the speed limit on Route 9 between the Exit 11 bypass and Stonebreak Road circles to 40 miles per hour. There are 4 residential neighborhoods, Malta Point, Malta Gardens, Woodfield Estates, and Cedar Point, and 2 more planned right now along that section of Route 9, plus individual residences and small businesses. That area is within the town of Malta, a family town, yet the speed limit is 55 miles per hour. Route 9 was the major highway between Albany and Saratoga 50 years ago, but anyone who needs to speed from one city to another can now take the Northway. As Malta has evolved, the lowered speed limits and added sidewalks in the northern part of Route 9 should be replicated in the growing southern part of the town, where residents are walking or biking to Round Lake or the Zim Smith Trail, and cars are whizzing past at 60 or 65 miles per hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory.
Dory,
Yes.
you're recommending that the speed limit be reduced to 40 miles an hour between Round Lake Bypass and Stonebreak Road?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You know, there is a process for that, and I'm sure we will be discussing it in the future, so. Anybody else from the public?
What's the next process that we got to do for her?
I think we have to appeal to the Department of Transportation.
Well, I think that I'm all for a request to go right away from this office. Got
It
my
needs to be a
support.
joint request to the county. So first we make a request up to them to support it, and then it goes over to DOT.
Not just me, I don't know if everybody else wants to feel on the board on that.
I certainly don't see why not. You know, so, all right, we'll try to pursue that. We'll have to have probably a resolution at some point.
Well, before we get too far, let's,
Any, data
No,
on the
this is,
data
this
as
is the
far as
first I've heard of this request, so.
speeding tickets or? Okay.
and before we go too far down that road, because it's going to take a lot of muscle to make that happen, that we get our traffic study engineer report from the Department of Transportation instead of us paying for it, because it still may get a no. So that's how I look at it.
Well, we'll figure out that process and see where we go from there. Anybody else from the public?
Hi, Susan Nuttall, May Appleway in Luther Forest. I just have, I know this isn't, it's very loud, a time for questions, but I just had a couple of, I guess, comments or maybe things that I'm not understanding that with follow-ups that maybe at a later time could be addressed. There's a few things that I feel like have been brought up at the meetings, and I feel like I usually come to every meeting, and since then, I haven't really heard any follow-ups. I haven't heard this is going to happen, it's not going to happen. A couple of the examples I can give is when someone had requested that the pride flag be flown. Matt did make his statement about how he felt about it, which is fine, but I never heard or read anything about the board making a decision as a whole. And another thing is that people keep requesting about the planning board meetings being streamed. We were at the planning board meeting again the other night. It was brought up by 2 or 3 people. That just seems to be, I don't hear any, updates on that either. So I'm just, a little concerned. The last thing that had come up at the last boarding meeting I was at is that there was a discussion about a possible, more people were interested in and board members were interested in a possible moratorium on building for a while. And I'm just wondering, I'm just hoping at some point we'll hear an update on some of those things. Thank you.
During the town board comments, I will remark on some of those things for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Cynthia from Malta. Can you also extend that up to the exit 13, that DOT thing? Because you got a child nursery thing, you got an ice cream place, and you got a whole bunch of developments going on through there too that are already there and more being developed. Can they add that so that Saratoga can sit there and catch all the speeders?
Thank you, Cynthia. Murray, I think it's your turn.
Murray Heitzman, 60 Round Lake Road. I would just suggest, I like the suggestion of the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. I would extend that to the next speed drop would be 30. Where it gets into downtown, there's no use going 40, 45, and then dropping to 30. So just extend that on up. The apartment people go in and out that direction too, and there's no use speeding it up to 45. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It goes to 45, doesn't it? Before the roundabout, south of the roundabout, it does go to 45.
Linda Noble, Mayapple Way. With all the discussion we've had on development and traffic studies and everything else, I just want to suggest that maybe also look into escape routes. And the reason I say that is because with everything going on out west with the fires, and we had some water in our neighborhood one day when there was a lot of rain. We had like a puddle all the way across Partridge Drum. I think if there was ever an incident that we had to evacuate, there should be a plan. There's plans in other places that we've lived, and they're necessary. You never know what's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Linda, I'm actually currently revising our emergency management plan for the town, and that will, thank you for the suggestion. I'll include that.
Anybody else? Okay, then we will move on to comments from the town board. I, of course, have several things. Gonna let the clerk kind of get us set up here for one of them. I think those of you that have been coming here regularly, you know that we have approved for 2 different Girl Scout troops to install a Gaga pit in 2 of our parks. They did the first one at the Luther Forest Athletic Fields, and they had a little ceremony where we saw finally what a Gaga pit actually is. So it was really kind of incredible that these young ladies used, power tools and all sorts of stuff and actually built this thing themselves, of course, with the help of some other engineering people, but they were so proud of themselves for using their power tools and putting the whole thing together. we finally saw them actually playing Gaga, which is the lower left-hand corner. They're playing a game there. It's interesting. It's another activity. Got these young ladies out there. They all worked together and they achieved whatever badge it was they had to achieve. So there are instructions on the side of the Gaga pit. So if you want to know how to play, you can go over there and look at them. So I want to thank them, the Girl Scouts. I think we're getting another one in Shenandoah Park. So we'll be Gaga all over. Another thing is, we had a meeting, Matt was there with the Malta Athletic Association to begin some sort of negotiation to redo their contract a bit. It was a productive meeting, I think, and we came to some understandings, and hopefully we'll be able to announce that we'll have a new contract and everything will go great. The other thing that we met with is the Union Contract Negotiating Committee, met with the representatives from the union. As you may know, our highway department are unionized, and so we are at the end of a 3-year contract, negotiating for another 3-year contract. I think it went well. I think we haven't really talked about it, but we're hoping that by next week we'll have some sort of report to be able to report to the town board where they're at and where we're at. As far as the planning board meetings go and zoning board meetings, first of all, I'm not really sure that this board can actually act and tell the planning board what to do. They're a separate separate agency, not really an agency, that we really are supposed to have no influence on. And also remind everybody, the planning board and zoning board members are unpaid volunteers in the town of Malta. The planning board considers written comments, and they're part of the official record if you have written comments on anything. All the current projects actually are on a map on the planning board webpage on the town's website, and this gives a description of all the ongoing projects as well as current status of projects. The planning staff has told me that they would encourage residents to call with questions about the current projects. The other thing about the planning board meetings is there's a lot of documents that go back and forth. So the logistics of being able to share those online seems complicated. And last, I have found with this board and most boards that streaming only adds to the vitriol we all see on social media. And I don't think that we should, this is my personal opinion, I don't know where the best of the board stands on it. I don't think that we should subject those volunteers who are residents of the town of Malta, just like you, and they have a stake in the future of the community. And if we start streaming, they'll start getting all the hating on that we get, and they're getting it anyway. And I just don't think that that's fair to our volunteers. I don't know if the rest of my board members disagree, and I will get an opinion from legal about whether or not this board can even take any action to force them to stream. But in the meantime, I really would encourage you to go in and talk to the planning staff about projects that you're interested in. So, as far as the moratorium, we are having a workshop on August 26th with our zoning consultant that's working on the rezoning. So we'll hopefully find out and discuss more about that then.
I'm sorry, you
Yeah,
don't.
go ahead.
I'd just like to reinforce what you were saying, Cynthia. The town is made up of 4 boards: the town board, the zoning board, planning board, and the Board of Assessment Review. And no one board has jurisdiction over the other board. I'm not even sure, Steve, if that'd be the correct word to use, but as Cynthia was saying, we have no control over the zoning or over the planning board. And the planning board's discretion on a lot of projects is very limited to the zoning laws that this board has passed over the course of the several years. And as far as them being streamed, I really want to know what the planning board, if they would want it to be streamed, be the first people I'd want to ask. If there's anything that, obviously, the development in this town has been a hot subject here, and we just ask that you understand that the planning board and the planning department and zoning boards, they have to adhere to the zoning laws that have been passed by the town boards over the course of the years. That if you don't like a project, it's not the planning board's fault. It truly is up here at this board here. And that being said, I'd just like to say that our planning department, they don't have the authority to say no to a project, nor do they have the authority to say yes to a project. They simply take the applications and guide the applicant through the procedures, being able to go forth through the planning board or zoning board or what have you. That's what I'd like to say, Cynthia.
May I add to that comment? Just, I spoke recently with the supervisor. Many towns have a policy where if there is a project proposed or a zoning change proposed, they put up something that kind of looks like a for sale sign or a little larger. I know the city of Saratoga up the road does that. Given that newspaper coverage is so sparse now, it's very difficult for people to know what's going on until it's way too late to weigh in. And I think if we had a policy where any property, where any significant change, project, zoning, planning, whatever it is, we should post a sign so that neighbors and adjoining properties owners have a chance to look into it. I know many of you feel, and before I was elected, I felt I didn't find out about things until they were way down the line. And everyone's answer was, well, it's too late now. It's all been taken care of. So I think our neighbors deserve and should have access to plans. And as I said, given newspaper coverage, what it is today, posting signs seems like a fairly inexpensive and I think effective way of letting people know of a proposed change.
On a totally different note, I've got a question. I've been confronted by several Malta residents and outsiders also. They have asked what the status is of the Mangino's property that we have acquired at our taxpayers' expense. And I would like to know who was appointed to that committee to advise us on the path forward and their input.
Well, Craig, there is no committee. This board did not appoint any committee. The former supervisor had a task force that I reconvened at one point, and we kind of all meet regularly, a lot of times down there. The status of the park, which I actually have that as a discussion item later on, but I can do it now. We've run up against several bumps in the road. We had some real serious drainage issues that we think have been fixed. There's still more work to be done in that regard because there's a pipe that drains into the lake that we think needs to be taken out and then put riprap in, whatever that is. That's our stormwater management officer has advised that. There's a couple of wells that, well, I don't know if one's a well. There are other things that need to be removed. There's a big hole that has pipes in it that we don't really know what they are. So there were just other solutions that I had hoped that we would be able to get it cleaned up and open it up as a passive park for our residents this year, but we've kind of all unfortunately and disappointingly resolved ourselves to the fact that that's not going to happen.
So what is the path as far as coming up with a plan for the park in the future? That's what they're asking.
Yep. The plan for the park in the future will have to be kind of decided in the future. Once we get it so that it's at least a place where people can go and sit down there, then I think we, as a board, will have to get together and decide what other improvements we want to make. Right now, we're not even trying to make any improvements. We're just trying to make it a green space so people can go down there and sit.
The committee hasn't done
There, yeah,
Anything?
there is no
this time?
committee. There never was a committee.
Task force.
The task force. Just, we get together regularly and talk. It's, you know, and go down there and look and
Who's on the
say.
task force?
Myself, Kristen Gottman, Terry Barnes, Floria and Adrian have both been very active.
Yeah.
Who else do we usually have? That it?
No residents have been
I mean,
having input at all?
there really isn't much to have input on at this point.
It's their park.
Well,
They better have input.
we're not making any real improvements. We're just cleaning it up. Once there's time for improvements and decide whether or not we want
I'm
a
not
pier
saying
or a
about
dock.
doing improvements. I'm saying a plan and a path in the future. That's what people are asking me.
Well, we
They don't tell
will,
nothing.
when we get to that point where we want to make a decision about the improvements in the park, we'll definitely probably have some workshops, some public input, because there are a lot of different things we can do down there.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, we're just trying to make it safe and really not doing anything other than fencing the perimeter, which that's kind of been on hold because they're kind of busy, and then fixing the drainage, the drainage was huge.
Fair.
So, I think we got it though. Last time it rained really hard, we all went down there and looked,
Saw
and it drained.
Yeah. I
So-
saw it.
So, yeah,
Thank
but like I say, when we start to make plans for improvements, we'll make sure anybody who wants to have input will have input.
Okay. The other thing that I have is you had stated that there was a conversation about the MAA contract. I asked to be involved in that. You said yes.
Yes, we haven't really.
I was never told about this updated review. Why not?
Well, first of all, Matt called me the day before and asked to be there. So he and I there, we can't, you know.
Because
have
there's a
more,
lot
but
of
you did
things
ask,
that I
yeah.
have to
Yeah.
address in that.
Yep,
One of the big issues is the cricket fields that all of a sudden ended up at our park without our authorization. They literally make a mess of it on Saturdays and Sundays. I've been there, I heard about it, I've gotten complaints from workers in town, residents in town, they trash it. They were asked to pick their trash up afterwards. They did. They picked it up, they put it in a big trash bag, and they threw it in the woods. And then our maintenance guys go in, they pick it up, and they're getting irritated. And
as they should.
it's not very respectful. I don't know if they're even residents in town, but they went in and put a pad without authorization, I think, of probably over $500. Now, a great example is that pit up there. They were done by Girl Scouts. Their students, their kids. They went and got the process done correctly, came before the board. But the cricket people did not.
These are issues that we hope to address in the
that
new
contract.
contract, yeah.
Thank you
There
very
were a
much.
lot of them, so.
All right.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I do. I'll be fast. Maybe answer some of your questions. On the flag that Matt didn't want to be flown during June, Pride, the Pride flag, which I agreed should not have been flown. But we did not, but to answer your question, we did not have any formal vote from the board on the decision. It was just discussed and it didn't materialize, if you were wondering. There was not an official vote that happened on that. Same thing with moratorium on building. I mean, we got a workshop on the 22nd, but there is nothing officially as a written document or resolution that a moratorium on building in this town has happened, even though I'm all for pumping the brakes and making sure we get our zoning correct first before we continue forward. I agree, if the notes are going to be public for the planning or any other meeting in this town, I see no problem streaming it too. And the last thing, there's 2 dead trees down there too at Mangino's that need to come down,
There's more than 2 dead trees. There's probably,
big ones.
there's a couple big ones you don't even see from where you are. There's one that's huge. There's probably, there's a lot of trees that need to come down. One's massive.
future though, right?
It's gonna happen in the future. I mean, it's another one of those things that, we can't have to get that stuff done before we even decide what to
It's
do.
been a long bunch of years before anything happened to that project. It's
Yeah.
going to be, it's not rushed to failure.
Yeah,
I have one more thing there
Yeah.
to say. In light of our August 26th workshop with Barton and LaJudas regarding our zoning, which I'm happy that that process is ongoing. In lieu of our board pending addressing our zoning issues, I'm going to temporarily withhold any consideration for any PDDs until such time that our zoning has come into compliance with our comprehensive plan. I want to ensure that any development that comes from a PDD meets the standards of the comprehensive plan, and that said development is also what the people of Malta want for the future of our town. I'm going to withhold any consideration, entertain any PDDs temporarily until we tighten up and bring our zoning up into compliance with our comprehensive plan.
well, right now, we don't have any in-house, or any applications, so,
I'm with you 100%, Matt.
The only question I have on that is, you said that you want to put a moratorium on PDDs, right?
What I stated is, I am not going to consider a PDD until.
Oh, so
our
you're
zone-
not going to put a moratorium on?
I can't put a moratorium on.
Exactly.
Right, I didn't say
Thing
that.
is, with a PDD, as we have discussed, the town board has complete control over the outcome of that. So
That is correct.
well, I know it's correct.
And what I'm saying is, as a member of the town board, I am not going to consider a PDD until our zoning comes into compliance with the comprehensive plan.
When you have full control over it anyways.
I am exercising that control.
Okay. Steve, is it possible to put a moratorium on PDDs or any specific?
Craig, you can vote in favor of a PDD.
I'm asking the lawyer.
I'm saying I'm not going to until our zoning comes in compliance with the comprehensive
I'd
plan.
like him to ask that question.
So, yeah, a moratorium is a legislative process. It's an amendment to the zoning code based upon a specific need. But the town board, if they think it's required, they can do it on all development. They can do it on certain permits, certain, a PDD, for example. If there's a need for it, you have to document that need, and it's a full-blown legislative process. It would involve a local law, would involve public hearings, referral to the county planning board. So there's strict requirements for a moratorium. We haven't pursued that yet. I think when we have that workshop with our advisors, at that time, we may have further guidance on if there are areas that the town board should consider those and what are the factors that need to be considered. We need to be real careful with them. They're very, very hotly contested and litigated for various reasons because people have property rights. And, if you're preventing them, it can be a taking. And if we don't do it right, the town can be responsible for taking of property rights. But the short answer is yes, under certain circumstances, you could, tailor the moratorium to specific areas of our zoning or land use that are, that result from the changes in the comp plan, for example. So there would be a mechanism to do that where it's not all or nothing. As far as the rest of the question, each board member can, a PDD, an application is another form of legislation that each board member has a voice and a vote on. And, I would just stress that the board should follow our existing code and and procedures to do things the proper way if we are presented with PDDs.
So if you're trying to control zoning and development according to the comp plan, why don't you put a moratorium on all building?
Well, for example, and you know, this is hypothetical, but it may be relevant to ours. You know, our zoning, our comprehensive plan was an update, and there were, in some areas of town had no changes. If there was no changes, why would there necessarily need to be a moratorium in that area? If there were 50 applications that came in with a rush to try to get development before the code was updated, you would probably have stronger grounds to say, hey, wait a minute, this area really, we need to slow this process down. So I think you have to look at the actual facts on the ground to make that determination, you know, but right now I don't have a specific area to comment on other than to say it is an important consideration of the board to look at. All right, step one was updating the comp plan, step two is updating the zoning. And then we want to make sure that we're completing planning towards what our comp plan says and the direction that it wants us to go. And we need to be real mindful of developments if they're not consistent with that. How do we want to handle that? If it's a PDD, it's not consistent with the comp plan, the board's not going to approve it, I would think, I would hope. If it's any other project, you know, there's always this dilemma. There's an existing zoning code in which allows for development, and you have a comp plan that says we need to update these areas. So you have this lag that we're in right now, and one of the considerations is a moratorium, and to what extent, if so, is it necessary? And then what we would, if the board finds that yes, we need to take that action, it would be through an amendment to our zoning code to put a stop, to put a temporary pause. And the factors are, you know, it has to be reasonable, it has to be limited in duration, and there has to be a need for it. You have to substantiate why this is necessary. So I think it's a good discussion. I think the board is actively involved in that discussion. We're going to be getting more advice from professionals in the regard, and when we have that information, we can report back to the public and then make a good decision about it.
So just so the public knows, that workshop is scheduled for August 26th. We're going to start at 4:30. It's the same night as our town board meeting. It will be basically just a discussion, open to the public, between the board and our consultants. Afterwards, if you have comments and things that you want to make, you can stay for the board meeting and make comments during the public comment period. The follow-up will be, there have to be public hearings and all that sort of stuff before we change any zoning
I would like,
process.
I would just like to reiterate what I stated. I stated that I am going to temporarily withhold my consideration for any PDDs until such time that our zoning has come into compliance with our comprehensive plan. I substantiate that by recommendation number 11 within our comprehensive plan that has been passed. Recommendation number 11, discourage the use of planned development districts that bring limited benefit to the town or its resources, result in higher density development, or encroach on the local community zone. Until we sit down, go through the workshop, and until we tighten up our zoning to meet the comprehensive plan, I am not going to entertain any PDDs. You can.
I didn't say I would. I just don't understand why you're focusing on PDDs and not other parts that are not in compliance with
I would love
the
to,
comp plan.
I would love to put a moratorium on all major development
There you
that's coming
go.
down, but it's not going to feasibly pass. I've already felt it on the board. It won't pass. If we could, I would love to go down that road. But this here I can control. I control one vote of a PDD, and I'm stating that I will not entertain a PDD until our zoning comes into compliance.
And that's your choice. frankly, I think all development in town should be carefully considered, not just PDDs, all the zoning.
I agree.
But we have to have a plan.
All right, we're going to continue this on the 22nd or 26th?
Sixth.
26th. I can't wait.
Okay, so unless anybody has anything else. Yeah,
I do. As you know, I'm married to a history guy, and I promised him that I would make his concerns known tonight. There are two buildings in Malta, one on right over here in downtown, and not the church, across the white building there, and the one on East Line and Route 67 with the old schoolhouse church, which never had many uses. They're both in disrepair. The one on 67 and East Line is getting dramatically so. I don't know what the town's policy is, what our options are, what responsibility of the property owners is, but it seems a shame that since those have been identified for historic preservation, that they're just being left to rot. What can we do? Can,
don't think this is, you're gonna make a habit of this. Just this one time.
Okay. Wearing a whole new hat as the chairperson of the Historic Preservation Review Commission, which is a CLG, a certified local government in Malta. We can designate historic properties that we have identified, and we have identified many properties. We can make that designation as a CLG without town approval, but the town board has asked that no designation is placed on any building without that owner's consent. So although they may be historic, we have absolutely no control as far as preservation. So I just wanted to point that out because we would love to preserve more buildings, but if the owner doesn't buy into that, which we were hoping to do through maybe a tax credit, we have no control.
Thanks, Kathy. Anything else? Okay, moving on, we have two action items for tonight. The first, fairly easy one, our highway superintendent would like to hire a new hire. He's down a couple, just helps to fill his gap a little bit. And I believe he's hiring this young man as a seasonal laborer. So I will entertain a motion to approve highway seasonal labor.
forward.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The next, of course, is related to the hearing that we had before the meeting. And so we have a resolution before us to accept the code enforcement officer's recommendation to condemn Lot 12 at 2738 Route 9, Mechanicville, in the town of Malta.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
These next items are just things we're going to discuss coming up. We had a facilities meeting, and we determined that a path forward. Let me start over. We have facilities issues here. I don't know if any of you have been in court. Our court building was an old home. It is really not suitable as a court. There are all sorts of reasons why that is. And the Town of Malta Town Court is a very active court. We also have some space constraints over here. So we met as a board and had a facilities discussion, and we decided to pursue the possibility of building a new courthouse here in Malta. I mean, it would have the added benefit of freeing up that space for us to be able to use for other stuff. So after that, after the board decided we were going to pursue this, we met with the consultant, Mr. Warner was there with us, and their consultant, of course, is our town designated engineer, Rebecca Labella. Then they, these two resolutions are proposals that they've submitted to us for doing a feasibility study for the building of new courthouse. Why there are two, I think I know what your question is, I'm reading your mind. They're recommended that we had before we start this, there has to be a survey anyway, because we're talking about building it on site. They wanted to break the survey out as a separate proposal because they wanted basically survey the entire site in case there are other things we want to do in the future. If we do it as part of, my understanding is if we do it as part of the proposal of siting and designing a courthouse, we won't be able to use that survey for other future things that we want to do. I did verify with them that the survey that they're proposing to do will include all of the information that we need to improve our drainage, which this whole site has drainage issues. And the survey should include anything we need in that regard. And it, like I say, they separate it out because then we can use it for other site improvements. Was that it?
It was,
Yeah, I disagree with that, what may happen in the future. I'm all for it. I understand you have to do a site survey, but let's just stick to the project and, focus on it instead of things after this. By the time this is built in years, their product is going to probably be old, so they're going to have new technology to find out, whatever's growing underneath the grass here is so precious that we can't dig here. So that's my prediction. But anyhow, again, I wouldn't go too crazy with them. For the vendor that's going to actually do the bidding on this, is kind of make them most responsible for anything that is underneath that they dig into for the big dig.
We did talk about taking out, that was the part of this. There's a couple things we took out of this one. The combining of the two properties, because this site actually has two different parcels, so we weren't going to combine them in this process. They have to do a survey anyway. And the only other option is to do the survey as a part of the project.
I disagree. I mean, I agree that we got to do a survey. What I don't want to do is, hey, we're going to do something over there by, where the highway department is 15, 20 years from now. I don't want to pay for that right now.
the reason for the survey was to update our planning department's records on our property, utilities, everything. The whole outside scope of it, and it was my understanding that if it was done this way, we could use the surveying crew, didn't have to be,
Well, if we don't know this information now, I think we're in trouble already. So, I mean, these buildings haven't moved in a long time. But anyhow, that's just mine.
well, you know, maps have to be updated once in a while, just like our water, just like our sewer. And if we can put a structure in there and not know what's underground or our setbacks, what's on the side, then we might as well stop it now.
Any further discussion?
They're gonna have to.
We're going to entertain these as separate surveys, and because there seems to be some dissension about it, I'm going to ask the clerk to do a roll call vote. The first one will be the professional services proposal for the survey. So I'll entertain a motion for that.
You're looking to action this now?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's not action. I'm sorry. Take that back.
Actually-
Yeah, I'm confusing myself. That'll be next week on both of those. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. So the next item for discussion is the Saratoga County Board of Supervisors passed a resolution to designate October 17th as Surrender Day. And they've asked the municipalities in the county to also do that, to pass a resolution similar. October 17th of 1777 is the day that British General John Burgoyne surrendered his sword to Patriot General Horatio Gates. It marks the first time in history that a British army ever surrendered. This is widely known as the turning point of the Revolutionary War. In the resolution, a resident pointed out to me that Horatio is spelled wrong, so in our resolution, we'll spell that correctly. But that's hoping that, something I'm hoping that next week we'll be able to pass. To designate, proclaiming October 17th as Surrender Day. It is an important part in Saratoga County histories, and with the 250th anniversary of this coming up, I think it's a nice gesture. The next is, as you know, we're in the process of purchasing the Saratoga Water Services. One of the process in that is that we have to bond $14.3 million. And so the next resolution that we will entertain next week is that bond resolution authorizing our comptroller to move forward and our financial advisors. Anybody want to discuss that?
I just want to state that Surrender Day, the county had passed a resolution.
Right, the county has passed a resolution. They passed it in September of 2023. This is kind of just a housekeeping thing. Our assessors want to go to a fall conference, so we have to act on that. And then, there's not really a whole lot to talk about Saratoga Water Services, the purchase of that. We're plugging along. We have a draft that we've been working on, that our town attorney had a few edits of, an intermunicipal agreement. The Saratoga Water Services services about 2,800 customers in Malta, but there are also 147 or something like that in the town of Stillwater. So we have to have an agreement between the town of Stillwater to figure out how those people are going to pay. And the town of Stillwater will also be paying their fair share of the debt service. One thing that I do want to mention is it's been pointed out to me that on social media, there has been some discussion about who is going to pay for that debt service. There's some misinformation that everybody in the town of Malta is going to pay for it. The only people that will pay the debt service are the people that are actually in the district. They'll pay the debt service whether or not they're customers of Saratoga Water Services, but only people in the district. Only people that are customers of what will be Malta Water District Number 1 will pay for the operations and maintenance, the O&M. So people getting water will pay for the water based on usage. But not everybody's paying for the debt service.
When do we estimate that the town of Malta will take control of Saratoga Water Services?
When do we anticipate this?
Yes.
We're shooting for a closing date of September 30th or October 1st.
So come October 1st, will Mackey be involved at all to guide the town on running the?
Well, first of all, we've been in, extensive discussions with them, and as you know, the contract states that we are hiring 4 of their employees.
Right.
So on September 30th, those people will be working for Saratoga Water Services. On October 1st, they'll be working for the town of Malta. They include the water operator, who's essential. It's actually 3 people that work on the water system, and then their bookkeeper. We're looking to try to hire another person to replace Alec Mackey, because if anybody knows Alec, he's not just the boss, he's a working boss. So they need a 4th person to actually run the system. He definitely will be around to advise us, but I think we have a pretty good handle on, especially with their operator coming over. Somebody that's actually, the operator has worked for Saratoga Water Services for 37 years. So he's
I'm thrilled our employees
Yeah.
are coming over. My concern is we're roughly 2 months out and we know we lose that building over there where they're currently headquartered at, and still need to find them a home where they will physically be able to work out of.
We've been working on a plan for that. They likely will be in the old highway garage
Okay.
when, Roger's aware of that, so.
What other work do we need to do as a town to bring over the water company and have it run successfully? It
Oh,
feels
there's
like-
all sorts of stuff.
Exactly.
We have
that-
to, we
that's-
have to.
Right, it's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, well, first of all, one thing is, of course, the intermunicipal agreement. The next step will be, our special counsel is drafting an ordinance. So this board will have to actually pass an ordinance that defines everything, how much we're gonna charge, and even though we've made those decisions, but that'll address all of the, mechanics of actually running a water system. We have to buy vehicles, we gotta move their stuff. We're getting their computers and their tools and their equipment. And, so there's a lot, definitely, if you, wanna come in, sit and talk, we'll get Julia in there and, it's a lot of moving parts. But we're all very confident that we're on top of where we need to be, so. And happy to talk with anybody, anytime.
Should we have a special workshop for the town board to be able to go through all these things?
I don't know that that's necessary. Most of it's being done by our outside counsel, so. I mean, certainly if you want input into where they're gonna be or what trucks they're gonna buy, most of it is just, like I said, they're gonna work for them one day and for us the next day.
Is the town board going to be the authority over the water district, or are we
course.
setting up a separate entity?
We're gonna have a water department. So they will be a department like planning and, Parks and Rec, but the ultimate authority, yes, is the town
Who's going to
board.
be able to say yes or no on who gets water?
Well, it would be a water line extension, so it would be this board that would decide on
The town board?
that,
Okay.
right? So. And as I say, that's all gonna be drafted in the ordinance, which we don't have yet. So all of that sort of stuff about, who can get new connections and when, and will all be
That's
part of
why
an
I'm
ordinance that
wondering,
we
do
will have to
the
adopt.
workshop, so the whole board, is because only two of us can meet at one time. So this is a pretty complex thing we're about to take over. Should we be doing a separate workshop for the board to attend so we know how to move forward and running the
Okay.
water company?
Well, we can certainly do that once our outside counsel has drafted the ordinance on our behalf. And then, yeah, if you want to have a workshop where we can all sit down and make sure that we understand how this thing's gonna go, then that's fine with me. But again, we need Bill Ryan to do his work first, so. Okay, anything else? Additional comments from the residents?
Hi, my name's Rick Hanley. I live at 6 Danbury Drive here in the town of Malta. There was some discussion a little bit earlier about the planning board meeting and some of the planning board meetings, planning board members feeling like there were a little bit of a cost. I was at that meeting. I thought there were a lot of legitimate questions that came up. And I think that it's very important to understand that town government is a place where key decisions are made. And how local development is done, our town is lead agency for establishing parks and trails, recreation programs. Our town administers town courts, organizes and provides community activities, staffs critical government functions, maintains roads, buildings, parks, government offices, library, and cultural activities. Town government, in my view, needs to improve the ways that it communicates with the community. I believe our town outreach needs to be more dynamic. I think part of what you're seeing from residents is that they don't know what's going on. They don't feel that they're being included. And for example, at the last planning board meeting, This is what I printed off the internet and off the website, and it listed 1, 2, 3, 4 public hearings, but there was no information on which the public could respond to. They could listen to the presentations that were being made, but the public didn't have the same kind of written information that the planning board had, or didn't have access to the drawings and stuff that were being done. And I think that makes people feel like they're being left out, or in some cases, like they're being run over, and that decisions are being made without their input. So I think it's going to be very important that, I think the planning board does a great job. I have no problem with that. But we may need, and in my opinion, I think it's the role of the town board to educate the public a little bit more about how this process works and how all these things come together. And I would encourage you to be more aggressive in your outreach and getting that information out. And that may mean not just from the podium, it may mean going out into the community and speaking to the residents and explaining how this stuff works. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
I have one thing that I'd like to address short also. The Miller Road Safety Study, which was requested, should be done by the end of July. So
Well,
we'll see if
that's
they're
Wednesday.
interested in
Yeah.
that or not anymore. I assume they won't be, but
Pretty much the end of July.
Yeah,
Well, maybe we'll have it.
you got 2 days.
You'll make it. Mark Hammond, Malta Ridge. A few things tonight, but I'm only going to focus on really one. Saratoga Water, historical event for this town. I don't know that a lot of people really understand the total gravity of that situation by purchasing Saratoga Water Service and Habit for this town. As I've stated before, but I'm going to be the broken record, it's because of what we can do with that water in terms of addressing many of the concerns that get brought to this board each month. That's our growth. Again, Mountain View Estates, the Stein Project, the list goes on and on. Water is the base of each one of those. If you do not have water, you're not developing. I've asked this question before, and it's even been in an email, because I know you don't answer questions, Cynthia, during board meetings. When, if ever, will this current board start being proactive and come together with a citizen group along with board members, but have someone to start drafting up ideas and guidelines and parameters we expect to utilize when delving out this water? Personally, I don't feel that a case-by-case basis is healthy. I think that if the town is serious about our growth, there's no better way to say that than with your water. Where will you run water mains to? Will you extend laterals off of those mains? And if to, where will they go? There are a host of questions that need to be thought of. And it's not after we close. This should have been done months ago. And especially after we found out that the referendum passed. It's critical for this town, which was one of the number one reasons why I wanted this so badly for Malta when we embarked on it over 2 years ago. This is for the health of this town. To handle it or mishandle it is a better word, could be very catastrophic. And much like I've heard, and you heard at the last meeting, people don't want this to be Clifton Park. If we start running water willy-nilly, it's going to be Clifton Park. One last thing, so I lied. Mangino's, the committee that I put together, Cynthia, you called it a task force, I guess. It was, Craig, just for you, so your knowledge, and for the board for that matter, when I was put together, I did that with folks that I knew were going to be very integral to the very basic part of this park and the vision that I had and others had on that task force before we even touched one building in terms of demo. There were some members apparently that didn't make it. Slipid was on that task force. I didn't hear Christina Connolly's name mentioned.
She has been involved.
I spoke with her today. She's only been asked one question, I guess, so far and been left out of it, but that's neither here nor there. But the fact remains that that was primarily for demo work and to have a vision, because as our own engineers told me, you don't want to go ripping and tearing unless you know what you want to have at the end. So make sure that they're in the loop. Labella helped us up to the point we got with Evolution, with the demolition of the buildings. The buildings that were demoed were done so because, let's face it, they were what they were. It was an old, decrepit restaurant that nothing could be saved. But every structure was looked at. The engineers said of the structures that were left that they were, in fact, sound. Did they need work? Absolutely. It'd been years since any maintenance had been done on them. My point being that those buildings that were left, one of which was, to Barbara Connor's point, one I would deem as historic to this town. It was the original clam shack back in the 20s or 30s, from what I was told by the Mangino family. That building was sound, and it was going to be purposed for restrooms. That was torn down after I left office. The gazebo, which there was nothing wrong with the gazebo at all. It needed a fresh paint, it needed a roof. That's gone. All of the trees that surrounded that, 50, 60-year-old cedar trees, maple trees, all gone. Clean slate. I can't tell you how difficult it was for the demo operator to remove the building and not touch those structures, but I can tell you it cost us money. And to see all of that just wiped away after they worked hard around those items was very discouraging to me. I haven't had one conversation with the supervisor because she has not reached out to me as of yet to ask about plans, about buildings, about anything. You know as well as I do, Cynthia, the time and effort and thought I've invested in that park. It was back when I was deputy supervisor. And for you not to at least solicit my thoughts, my feelings, or plans is irresponsible. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Well, then I will ask that we adjourn to a attorney-client privilege to discuss a matter that could result in possible litigation. And
I don't think there'll be any further board action after that.
Right, there'll be
meeting.
no further board action after this, but, so you don't have to wait around and see if we do something. So can I have a motion to,
So moved.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Nice to see your faces.
It's going to be,
Come again.
Woody.
It'll be. I'm gonna tell Melissa to lock the door until we're.